Hello everyone. Good evening and welcome to tonight's show. This is the nurse support group that I hold every weekday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time in New York City, 6 p.m. California. Yeah, so start there. And of course, I have my loyal friend with me, Bianca, who is watching live in Chicago. Let's get to it, okay? So these sessions are just 15 to 20 minutes, real quick ones, unless it's necessary to go longer. And these sessions are really for starting nurses who are just filled with anxiety and they've got so many questions, so many thoughts in their minds, and I'm just here to, support you. So for those of you who are new, my name is Daniel. I live in New York City. My background, in a nutshell, is in intensive care, and now I work as a school nurse here in New York City. Before New York, I was in London. I worked in cardiothoracic surgery, disability analyst, and I also worked in a nursing home or nursing center. And then before that is in the Philippines, I worked in intensive care, the coronary care unit, and the medical surgical ward. So let's begin. Now, for tonight's topic, we're going to talk about falls, because it is now officially the first day of fall in the northern hemisphere. The weather is much cooler now, just like how you feel when you find out that your patient has fallen. So, I'm gonna put these tiny books into this bookshelf just so that this visual is more entertaining for you to watch while we talk about falls. Now, the main takeaway I want you to remember, that I want you to have from this session, is this: that falls aren't, never take falls personally. Falls, if your patient falls, that is not a reflection of your competency, all right? Because I know that when a patient had when I had a patient that fell, I would feel so bad, so bad. And why is that? Why did I feel so bad, so guilty that my patient fell? You know, when it's not like I wasn't doing anything. I was taking care of my other patients. I was looking after my 9 other patients, right? So I have learned as time went by, as I worked, in the wards, in the intensive care unit, etc. I've learned that, you know what? Falls aren't a reflection of my competency. Falls, and this is what I want you to remember. Okay, are you listening? Falls are, or falls is a reflection of the system in place, meaning the system of the hospital, the system of the facility. What does that mean? So, to give you an example, I was working in London at a ward, surgical ward, and we were understaffed. We were supposed to be at least 3 nurses, and that includes the nurse in charge, the charge nurse. But we were only two. Two. You're supposed to be at least 3 on the night shift. Given that it was a night shift, fair enough. Given that it was a night shift and it was a quieter, you'd think, oh, it's quiet, there isn't that much action going on. On the contrary, try to work in a ward that's post-surgical cardiothoracic, right? And for those who are not familiar, it's very common for confusion to occur after these big surgeries. Confusion as in people wanting to get out of bed, as in people who have catheters in place, but they forget that there's catheters. So they get out of bed, try to walk away as their catheter is pulling them back, and then they fall, hitting their head on the ground or on the bed. And remember, these patients are on, blood thinners. So not only will they be injured, they might break a bone, but they'll also be very, at high risk of bleeding. So What that means, so we would always request, like, no, you can't give us, we can't be understaffed, because that's gonna make things scarier, right? It's gonna make things risky. And very often, you always see, places being understaffed. And you gotta just carry on and do your activities, do your tasks. So, things will happen. It's really out of your control. Fortunately, some facilities will have a one-to-one, assistant nurse one-to-one with these patients who are at high risk for falls. Now, who are at high risk for falls? Or at least what should you remember? Now, this might not be an exhaustive list, and I will always encourage you, please, please always follow your facilities policies with regard to fall prevention and fall assessment. But for you to remember, patients who are at risk for falls are, number one, if they have any balance issues, if they feel dizzy easily. Number two is if their blood pressure changes when they stand up, or if they're taking any medication, if they are on medications that will affect their blood pressure and will affect blood pressure changes. Okay? So condition, and then number three is you've got confusion too. Now, are patients taking blood thinners, are they at risk for falls? Not necessarily, but they are at risk for higher, how do you say this? Severe effects from falls. And therefore you have to be extra cautious with them. Okay? And that's also something you have to take into consideration. If they fall down, you have to use that in your risk factors for a need for CT scan or the frequency of their monitoring because of their post-fall situation. But every facility has their own fall prevention policy. One hospital in the Philippines, we would put like a yellow star on their headboard as a reminder, because the star falls. And it's a reminder to everybody that that patient is high risk for falls. We're also allowed to pull up the bedside rails, but I think it's here in the States, some facilities won't allow you to raise up your bedside rails because it's like you're entrapping your patients, the liberty of your patients. And this is very common for us Filipinos in the Philippines, because the law in the Philippines, as I understand it, is there's a lot of gray area. So meaning, I guess we were allowed to, there was more liberation on how we can make sure our patients stay safe with regard to restraints. While over here in the States, there's really a lot of documentation and assessment that continuously goes on in these facilities. Anyways, back to my point. So yeah, with regard to bedside rails, raising it, always remember to follow your facility's policy on fall prevention. Because if you know, and this is kind of common sense, you cannot practice nursing the same way you practiced it in other countries, because laws are different. What you might be able to get away or do in the Philippines or in other countries, you might be sued in the States. You might be sued for imprisonment or false imprisonment or whatever, and or the worst is sexual harassment. And the sad, not the sad thing, but the thing here in the States is it's really fire at will. Oftentimes, you will not even get an investigation. If there's a complaint lodged against you, you can say goodbye real soon. Not all the time, but there's a big chance. Okay? All this to say is that it's really out of your control. You can do your best to prevent it, but if you're not, just remember this, if you're not one-to-one nursing, then there is a higher probability of these fall incidences from happening. If there's no one-to-one nursing support to be with that patient or resident, then that's a high risk in itself. Okay, I know we all hate the paperwork, but that's just the reality of nursing. And this is what I want to remind you all, especially if you're new nurses. I get it. We want an easy shift. We want to go home on time, right? But that is the exemption and not the rule. I repeat, don't don't be too fixated for an easy shift if that's not the case most of the time, because you're only going to set yourself up for failure and disappointment, and getting that disappointment already drains you of energy. And in this line of work and industry, you got to preserve your energy, you know, because it will manifest when your energy is being drained. You're gonna look older. You know, no matter what skincare you do, no matter what hair treatments you do, if you are not managing the energy of your body, you're just throwing money away, right? It's just placebo effect. You'll just feel good for that 1 day spa, but the rest of the days you're just gonna look old, right? So just to recap with falls, falls are a reflection of falls are a reflection of the systems in place and not your competency. Okay, don't feel guilty of a fall if you are understaffed, because that is the responsibility of the facility, of the hospital, to make sure you are properly staffed to decrease the incidence of a fall. Because when you are properly staffed, there is proper monitoring and checking of these patients, all right? So if a fall happens, don't feel guilty. It should be on your supervisor or your facility. But this does not give you license to yap at them like, oh, I told you that we were short-staffed, now this happened. Because I know that in nursing, we easily get so frustrated because we often take things so personal. Because when we go to work, we really feel like it's life or death situation, and we really feel like our nursing license, our livelihood is on the line at every moment. But I urge you to always carry yourself professionally, because the moment you act hysterical, the moment you're like, oh, I told you this, I told you that, remember, we still need our jobs. We still need our jobs. We have bills to pay, and we need those bridges. We need those people as a reference if we want to get another job. If you think your working place is not safe, if you think, oh my God, they're just in the habit of short staffing us, then quietly leave and start applying for other places, right? But never ever get too emotional when things go wrong, because you are the employee, all right? And you need their references. So that is our topic on falls. Have I had patients who've fallen? Yes. And remember, so this is where it's interesting, because some facilities, they have a policy where if you see a patient fall, you have to let them fall, because if you catch them from falling and you're in an awkward position, you might pull a muscle, you might hurt your back, and guess what? You're not covered. You're not covered. So always pay attention to during the orientation phase on fall policies, okay? And you have to put your health first with your back, because you don't want to break your back. I know we care so much for these patients, but we are no good to them if we hurt ourselves too, okay? And I remember one friend said that in their hospital, to prevent falls, they have this like light stand with a camera. And if the camera senses that the patient is getting up out of bed, it will have this automated voice that says, please stay in bed, please stay in bed. But of course, as you know, if you've worked with confused patients, they're not going to listen. So when patients don't listen for their own good, there is this principle that I've learned in the UK, which is called the right to self-determination. The right to self-determination. So even if you think that this is what's best for them, they have a right to do whatever they want. And an example is like, them smoking a cigarette, them drinking alcohol, even if they're at the hospital for a liver transplant. They have a right to self-determination. Because I worked at a hospital that specializes in liver transplant. And I always thought to myself, because this is socialized healthcare in the UK. And I always thought to myself, wow, like, how do these patients get disqualified? Because many of them are alcoholic. They're big drinkers, and they're in queue for a liver transplant. And remember, healthcare is free in the UK. But I was just amazed to find out that there is no condition that says, oh, if you drink while waiting for your liver transplant, you get disqualified. I didn't hear any of that. I was like, wow, good for them, good for the UK, Although not good for the employees of the hospital, because socialized healthcare leads to lower wages, so to speak. So yeah, the right to self-determination. So like you've already done, and what this means is you've done your patient education already. You told them, this is the call bell. Press the call bell if you need help so you don't fall down. Remember, you are taking medications that could make you feel dizzy, especially medications that make you drowsy, sleepy. But they still want to do what they want to do. And then that led to a fall. But you don't feel guilty because that was their choice. And what do we call that? The patient's right to self-determination. All right. So that is our topic for tonight. Fall. Don't fear the fall, because it's really a choice and it's really something you can't control if the system is not there to support you, because you're always understaffed. And that is the result of understaffing. And that's just how it is. All right. I wish we all nurses worked in environments like in California, where staffing ratios are the law and enforced, meaning if it's short-staffed, they're going to close rooms. But that's not the case. And we always have to just work with the real world and not have these, super optimistic hopes, because we only end up disappointed at the start of the shift, or the shift even hasn't started yet and you're already disappointed. And what does that happen? It zaps your energy away. All right, so always be pragmatic, and it is what it is. So as we wrap this up, you guys have any questions with regard to falls, or just anything with regard to nursing, with regard to nursing practice in the UK, in the US, and the Philippines? Are you a Filipino nurse working overseas? Anything at all? And if not, we can close this up. It's almost like 20 minutes. So I see there is no questions. Here in New York, it's a holiday, Tuesday and Wednesday. Yay, a school holiday. So no work for me. But I will still see you again tomorrow at 9 p.m. and I'll launch the topic. I think the topic for tomorrow is the most important, or the important part of the patient. And that's my advice that I've learned when I was working in intensive care. So thank you guys for joining me in this live session about falls and not fearing the falls. I'll see you next time. And if you're new here, please like and subscribe. And hey, if you've got any questions or comments, Write them on the comments below once this video saves, and I'll see you. Oh, wait a second. Katrina asks, "How did you handle your fall incident?" Like this. You're right. You okay? Now, how do you, you know, I think my recent fall was here in the States in a nursing facility, and the policy was CT. Immediately had CT scan. So I saw my patient actually. So and it's interesting because when you do documentation, there is witness falls and an unwitnessed fall. So oftentimes it is not a witnessed fall. No, actually, the fall my most recent fall was me witnessing it, but it was more of like a fall. But he like slipped from his bed. Anyways, um, I witnessed him slipping on the bed. So I don't know, how do you classify that? He just slid from the bed and he just slid going down into the floor. So I see him on the floor, but I feel like he didn't technically fall. He just slid. Anyways, he ended up per policy, per policy, CT scan, you know, transport game. They did a CT scan. Everything was fine. I mean, what you do, you just do your observations, neuro vitals, you know, Glasgow coma, do your vital signs, and that's really it. And this is where you have to follow your facility's policy on how often you should do your neuro vital signs. Right? I hope that's helped. All right, let's wrap this up because I know it's getting late. Thank you again for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow at 9 p.m. New York time. And please be ready for your questions. You know, I'm an open book, so to speak. So, yeah, write away your questions. All right. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow, guys. Have a good night. Bye.